Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our virtual Manteca AgVenture. We are excited to have you here and can't wait to talk to you guys about agriculture, healthy eating, and all the things that go into agriculture for our panelists today. So as we allow a few more folks to join us, I want to go over a few housekeeping things. First of all, if you're joining us on Zoom, welcome. There's over 97 classes so far, so welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're joining us on Zoom and you want to ask a question, you can use the Q&A function in order to send that in. We'll be able to see those questions and get you guys some answers from our panelists live. So what'll happen is you'll submit the question and I will moderate that to the panelists. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can use the YouTube live chat and that will allow you to submit your questions that way. That being said, we want you guys to have a great experience and a good time today and learn a ton. In order to do that, you have to be sure that you are using appropriate language, appropriate content. So anything that goes in the chat or Q&A function need to be solely questions for our panelists. And if you see a few feet, it's because we are at a working farm and there are some flies flying around. So if you see something on the screen, that's all that is. So we've set our expectations. We want you guys to have a good time. We want you to be able to ask questions, be appropriate and respectful, and we'll all have a great opportunity. Before we get started, I want to do something that's very important to me. I want to thank our sponsors and the San Joaquin County Agricultural Commissioner's Office. They are the sponsors who bring this event to life and allow you to have this virtual experience. So up on your screen now is a list of the sponsors for today. So we have the San Joaquin Ag Commissioner's Office, San Joaquin County, the Cal Ag Plate Grant, California Ag in the Classroom sponsored your newspapers, the Ramus Foundation Grant, Specialty Crop Block Grant, and San Joaquin County Master Gardeners supported your bean in a bag activity. So one other thing that I want to chat about really quickly. So this is for parents, teachers, chaperones who are listening in. Turn your listening ears on. We have a unique and special opportunity for you. If you are watching us here on the live feed or watch the recording of this event, you are eligible to participate in our free Healthy Dinner program. This is a free 2-hour cooking class where you will learn how to make steak fajitas, pico de gallo, and guacamole. And then you'll take that product back to your house and be able to duplicate the recipe for your family. This will be offered both in person and virtual. The information's on your screen. So if you want to join us for that, please feel free to reach out to Rachel at San Joaquin County Farm Bureau. Finally, those of you may have your worksheet, and this is a fillable worksheet, so you can do this straight on your computer screen if you are joining us via computer. Be sure that you use that and follow along for all of the displays and presentations that we have for you today. We want you guys to learn something and have this worksheet. Finally, you have been asked to watch our presentations. We have professionally videoed presentations for you to watch. Those are live on our website and will remain there. And that is the presentation portion of your program. What we're going to feature today are the displays. So if you and your students haven't already watched those presentations, please go do so. They are at SJC AgVenture, and then under the presentations or field trips tab, either one will get you there. But be sure you guys go watch those. We have spent a lot of resources to be able to make those happen for you, and I think that you'll really enjoy them. So I don't know about you, but I want to get into it and learn a little bit more about agriculture and some of the diversity within our county. So the first thing I think we should do is everyone always loves livestock and that aspect of agriculture. So I want to take you out to the Manteca Unified School Farm. I don't know how many of you know this, but those of you who are in Manteca Unified, when you guys get into high school, you'll have the opportunity to be involved in FFA and be a member of one of the co-op opportunities here. So we're going to go out and talk to my friend Danny about some sheep and goats. So good morning, Danny. Thank you for joining us.
Hi guys, my name's Daniel Gavino and I'm here at the Manteca Unified School District Sheep and Goat Co-op. It's a farm where the high schoolers can come and they can learn to feed animals, take care of animals. They actually give shots to animals and they'll watch them have babies. In here we have a mixture of sheep and goats. So the sheep are actually the tall ones, the taller ones with the black faces and the wool. The goats have hair. So they're the white ones with the brown heads. They're much smaller. Both ruminant animals, which means that they have to eat alfalfa or grass. Sheep and goats actually have a lot of the same qualities. So they are weaned at the same time. So typically the babies will come off the mom at 2 months for both sheep and goats. It's usually 60 days or 60 pounds, whichever comes first. The sheep and the goats are both pregnant for 5 months each. So the same amount of time for both of them. So these are Boer goats that we raise here. The reason we raise Boer goats is because they are actually a meat breed of goat, so they have much heavier muscle. They're much thicker, especially if you look at that little guy right there. You'll notice how big his feet are, how wide apart he stands. He's actually got a really good, he is a good example of what we're trying to raise here. So behind me, I have some moms that have had babies just recently. Um, these babies are probably about a month old. The one right back there, the smallest one, he's actually only about 2 weeks old. Um, the reason we raise these lambs and goats is to go to 4-H or FFA kids, which are national. FFA is a national organization, and they can take them to their local fair. So they'll actually get them as a baby, typically at about 3 months old. Typically, they'll get them in about March, and they'll raise them till June, and they'll take them to the fair. Well, they'll exhibit them. They'll compete in a competition, and then they'll actually sell them. So those kids get an opportunity to make money off of those animals, and they get a really good experience out of it. So you'll notice on some of the goats, they actually have horns. They are born with these. We try not to take them off unless we have to. They do use them to destroy our fences and to play with each other. Um, they do hurt if they hit you with those, so you have to be careful for that. However, you'll notice on some of the little ones that don't have horns, we have to take them off because for the fair, they're not allowed to have anything over, I think it's like an inch long. So when they are babies, we do have to process them, which means that they're going to get shots right when they're born. They're also going to get an ear tag. So the scrapie tag is something that by law, we do have to have in every sheep and goat's ear. Scrapie was a disease a long time ago that was it's really a bad one. So what this does is it allows our sheep and goats anywhere, wherever we sell them to, even if they go to another state, they can be tracked back to this farm. So if that disease ever popped up again, we can stop it from spreading directly from the source. Um, they do also need several series of shots. So they'll get BOCI, which is a selenium shot, which fights against white muscle disease. And then they get CD&T, which will fight against coccidiosis and tetanus. Goats are pregnant for about 5 months. When they're born, they're probably about half the size of these. Um, Goats and sheep, we hope will have 1 to 2 babies, but they can have 3 or 4. Or I know I had a friend just recently that told me that one of their sheep had 5 babies. Um, that's never really a good thing because the moms only have 2 teats, so they can only efficiently feed 2 babies at a time. They can definitely raise 3. That's not a problem. Some moms are really good at producing milk. And we do have sheep and goats in the same pen. They are both ruminant animals, so they eat exactly the same thing for the most part. The only difference would be that goats do need copper. So their feed would have copper. So you don't keep them together for too long, but just right now they'll only be in this pen for maybe about 2 months with each other. Copper is actually toxic to sheep. So at that point you can't keep them together if you're feeding a feed with copper in it. So here is a pen of sheep when they're older. So these ones are probably about 5 to 6 months. You can see they've gotten much bigger. Um, what I do want to show you guys is sheep have wool, as you saw in the moms. We actually do shear them. So like that one right there is sheared. The one I have here on the halter is sheared. The reason we shear them is because it is spring right now. Now's the perfect time to do it because as we transition into summer, you don't want them to have too much wool on them. Otherwise, it's going to be really hot for them. Because these sheep are actually our keeper sheep. So there was a lot more babies. We went through, we pick out the best ones. And then these will actually be fed out. They'll be taken to shows and stuff. So the kids will actually learn to halter break them. So like this one's on a halter. We use halters to walk them around. And they'll actually get baths. They'll wash their legs. They'll trim their hooves. They'll pretty much get treated very nicely like they're at a spa all the time. And then they'll actually go to a show and hopefully win something. When you're working with livestock, they are prey animals, so they don't necessarily come up to you and let you pet them or just grab them. So you do have to use equipment. So like this panel here, it's a folding panel, so I can move it, I can fold it any which way I want. And it's actually perfect for, as you can see, cornering them up and keeping them where I need them to be so that I can work with them. Okay, so the halters are really easy to put on. This part right here that you hold on to, so that's the lead, that always goes under the jaw and coming out on the left side. There's a nose piece that's not adjustable. That piece will just always go right over the nose, and the rest has to go over and under the ears. Then you pull it, and that's it. All right, so we've talked about the sheep, we've talked about the goats and what we do with them and why we raise them here. A big important part of raising sheep and goats is feeding them. So this is, I had mentioned earlier, they have to have alfalfa or grass or some kind of forage to survive. So this is what we feed ours here. This is alfalfa. It comes in big stacks, so a big huge truck comes and drops off literally this giant cube all at once. So it's very easy. And then we do have grains. So grains are formulated for different life stages of the sheep and the goats. So to my right here, I have lamb slam. Lamb slam is what we feed them once they're pretty much off their moms. So when they're on just grain, lamb slam's a lot higher in protein, so it helps them grow. It helps them fill out to how we want them to look for the show. This one right here is U-mix. So U-mix is a lot higher in fat content. It doesn't have quite as much protein. That one is more of a maintenance feed, so we'll feed it to the moms with the babies. It'll actually help them produce milk. They need carbohydrates and stuff to produce milk. So that's really good for that. And then to the left is a goat feed. Um, Goat feed comes in pellets. Honestly, the goats really don't like it that much. They do eat it, they do need it as well, but actually typically we end up mixing Dominator, which is what this is called, and Lamb Slam together, and the goats seem to like that a lot better. And then if you look right in the back of the pen right now, that sheep is actually about to take a sip. Those are automatic waters, so they're really cool. We have them in almost every pen. We don't have to touch them. So we'll just make sure that they're on, make sure they're working, and make sure that they stay clean, but otherwise they fill up as they drink it. So it's really awesome.
Thank you so much, Danny, for taking us on a tour of the co-op here at Manteca Unified School District. I know our students appreciated it, and I always learn something. So thank you so much. We have several questions for you. We have some very interested third graders. So just as a reminder to teachers, if you're on Zoom, use the Q&A box in order to ask questions directly. And then I'll relay those to you, to our panelists on behalf of your students, excuse me. Okay, Danny, first step. They want to know how many goats are out there. How many goats and sheep do you guys have?
We probably have about 25 of each, so 50 total.
50 total.
If you
Wow.
include the babies, probably closer to 75.
Wow, that's a productive year. Awesome. That's great. Another student from Miss Hurst's class wants to know, when do sheep start growing wool/fur?
They're born with the wool on. It's very short, but literally you'll notice quite a bit of growth probably even within the first month of their life.
Got it. So it's kind of like our hair. Like we have hair, it's shorter when we're babies and it grows longer and we have to cut it, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Oh, another student wants to know, how big do they get?
They get pretty much just as big as those moms were in the video. They can weigh about 200 pounds.
Awesome. Um, we have someone who wants to know how much food do they eat per day?
So that depends on, I showed you guys those different feeds. Lambs will eat a lot more. So when the kids are feeding them out, they'll eat probably about 4 pounds a day. And that's because we want them to gain weight. The moms will probably eat about half that just because we want them to stay the same weight.
Got ya. So someone from Miss Rogers' class wants to know, how do you know when a sheep is angry or upset?
You'll know, they'll back up and they'll hit you. So it's pretty easy to tell.
Gotcha. Okay. And we have some students who have some questions about why the sheep and goats are in the same pen. And so just as a reminder to those on the worksheet, sheep and goats are ruminant animals. So they need to eat some sort of grass or forage. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but that's why you have them in the same pen.
Yes, they're in the same pen because they are all on the same feed, so they're all eating alfalfa. The moms all need the same U mix, it's called, just so that they can produce better milk. And we're also a little tight on space, so that is part of the reason why they're in the same pen as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I've had 3 rapid fire questions wanting to know, how long do sheep and goats live?
They can live from 13 to 15 years and be productive. I've known some that live longer. The market animals, though, will only live about 8 months.
Gotcha. Interesting. Good to know. Okay. I'm looking at all these questions. Man, I opened up a can of worms when I said that that they could um do this. Oh, Veritas School wants to know, how do you know if a sheep or goat is pregnant?
We actually ultrasound them. So just like your mom would get ultrasounded if she was pregnant, we do the same thing with the sheep and the goats.
Okay, interesting. And then we have several questions, which is really exciting to me. We have several questions from students who want to know, how do they become involved in sheep and goats at a young age, and how do they do the fair thing? They're curious about all that. Can you just like fill us in real brief?
Yes. So fair, you actually can't do until you're at least in 8th grade. That one you just talk to. I know a lot of the high schools would do like a day where they come to your elementary school. You just talk to them right then and there. As far as 4-H goes or jackpots, you can do that when you're 9 years old. If you just Google 4-H clubs around you, there's, I know, at least 4 or 5 around here that you guys could join from the age of 9 until you're 19, and you could show at the fair now if you wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay. So as a reminder, several questions. Sheep and goats are ruminant animals. Okay, so that's why they're A, together, and B, they eat grass and forage. Sheep and goats are ruminant animals, and that means they have one stomach that has 4 compartments. Okay. Final question for Danny. They want to know, do sheep, someone from Mr. Brown's class wants to know, do sheep and goats like to play?
Yes. The
Yeah.
babies especially, you'll notice they jump a lot and they run a lot and they'll play together and they'll run up the full length of the pen all day.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like the sheep and goats have a great time, and it's a great opportunity for our Manteca Unified students to take advantage of the co-op. So I certainly encourage any of you who want to be involved in agriculture, whether that's animal agriculture or other opportunities, plants, robotics, STEM, etc., to contact your local 4-H organization. San Joaquin County has a 4-H program that we can help you out with. So take advantage of that avenue if you'd like to. So thank you, Danny, for chatting with us today. I think we all learned a great deal. And so now we're going to shift gears, but only slightly. In one of those clips, you saw that Danny used a panel to help move and corner the sheep so he could work them as he needed to. There are other ways that we utilize animals in order to help us move our livestock, whether that's sheep and goats or whether that's cattle, etc. So I actually have a couple of friends who are going to talk to us and show us a little bit about sheepdogs and how sheepdogs work on their property and their facility to help them move their sheep around. So good morning, guys. Thank you so much for being here to the Alonjis. I can't wait to
You
talk
guys
to
get to
you.
see our home. My name's Amy Alonji, and this is my dad, Steve Alonji. Today we have with us Cade, and we have our flock of Dorper Katahdin sheep. They're a hair sheep, so you'll see some of them look kind of rough. It's because they're starting to shed. We're going to demonstrate how we use these dogs in a environment at home. He's going to bring them in for a gather, like we'd be gathering them up to our pens, and then off how we would separate sheep that we'd be either moving to different sections. So he'll do what we call a shed. Throughout, you'll hear the whistling of the shepherd's whistles that we use. We use these so that we don't have to yell over 1,000 yards. So you'll hear different chirps out of these whistles, and as he's using them, I will try to catch them and tell you what he's telling his dog. They travel as a team competitively all over the western U.S. They've gone to Colorado, and they're getting ready to go out to Wyoming, Afton, Wyoming in July. So they're pretty experienced as a competitive team as well. But today you get to see their ranch work. You guys can't hear it right now, but you'll hear some chirping of him directing the dog on where to go. We work on a clock face. So right now he's going clockwise, going towards 12 o'clock, and my dad is at 6. And that would be what they call a split. He split and is going to push one set of the sheep over to a corner, and then he should call for and have him look back to bring this other herd away. So he's regathering his sheep. But this is how we use these dogs in a realistic version. This is probably about 15 head we have right now. We have a total of 150 with our ewes and lambs, and these are what we call a working flock. He can direct the dog to move either group of sheep that he would need to have moved out, either to load or to bring into pens. The sheep work kind of like how off of a pressure and release system the dog gets into what we call their bubble and pushes the sheep forward and back. There's no chasing, there's no aggression, it's just pure body presence. It would be like if your teacher walked up behind you because you may have been talking or being disruptive in class, and the teacher just walks up and stands at you. That teacher gets into your space and you're like, oh, I need to behave. That's kind of what the dog's job is. They're in that sheep space to push them. We normally work at a distance of 1,000 yards for our big open dogs competitively. This area and our field that we have here is about 250 yards, 300 yards for an outrun. Right now the dog's moving come by or clockwise by the clock. He'll blow a long whistle that'll have the dog lay down, and they may be picking up. Each gait change you can tell that the handler has whistled. You can see that the dog and handler are quite a ways of difference. We have a lot of trust in these dogs when we push them out this far. A lot of times we can't see them. They'll go and lift sheep off of a hill and we can't see what happens. So we need to know those dogs are going to mind their manners and not grip on the sheep. You can see how he's pushing those sheep together. And I think by now you'll be able to hear some of the whistles. That's an away whistle. It's a wee wee. That real short chirp chirp, that's a come by. So now that we're done working sheep, we're going to go ahead and put them away. Everything we do is super quiet. We don't want to, if you're loud, everything gets upset and startled. So he's going to have the dog push the sheep off him so he can open the gate safely and not get ran over. get that'll do, and your day's done.
Wow, that was super interesting and awesome to see. Those of you who've been to AgVenture before know that we have the sheepdogs come out, but they're normally in a much smaller pen, which is hard to kind of get the full grasp of what those dogs are capable of. So thank you guys so much for taking us out to your property and showing us what the dogs can do. I really appreciate that. We have a million interested students over here. So several questions. The main questions we have for you are, first of all, how long does it take to train your dogs to do that?
Well, Cade is going to be 5 in July, and he's been training
about a year and a half old.
Since he was about a year and a half old. So he's got some time. A lot of his stuff is natural ability and natural instincts. It's our job to mess up 400 years of good work.
And so how does that training process happen? A lot of our students are curious.
They start when they're about 10 weeks old. They'll get introduced to sheep. They'll get put out with a small flock of what we call knee knockers. They'll come up, they'll stay real close to a person, and we just see if the dog wants to go out and circle them. It's the only time they kind of get to be what we call naughty, and just kind of walk into the sheep more than we would normally want our competitive dogs to work. And then they go into training more in depth, sometimes with a trainer. Most of our dogs we send out to a trainer. Now that my dad's home more, he's been training more of our dogs, and they just go up for drills basically. Awesome. And then by the time they're about 2, they're what we would call competitively, they're competing.
And so we have some questions about whether or not it's a certain type of dog that needs to be a sheepdog. Is there a certain breed or something like that?
There are several dogs that you'd see through AKC standards that which would be the herding group. Border Collies are your Michael Jordan, your superstar of the herding breeds. This is their job. This is their number one focus. Comparable would be your Shetland sheepdogs and corgis even. Still in England, they still use corgis.
Got ya. We have some questions from Mrs. B's class at Nile Garden, and several questions about, do the dogs ever hurt the sheep or bite them, or how does that work? We have several questions about it.
I wouldn't say they necessarily hurt, maybe of a defense mechanism. Sometimes we have a ewe that they have lambs. They're going to be protecting. So a dog has the opportunity to defend themselves. If they are fully behaving, we've had one of our dogs get rolled pushing sheep, but normally, no, it's all.
So normally the sheep and the dogs work pretty well together.
Yep, they do.
Gotcha. Okay, they want to know, is the dog or the sheep faster?
Oh, our dogs are much faster.
Much faster. Any idea how fast your dogs run? Our students want to know.
We don't know. I just know we have several that have, when they go out for an outrun, it's very quick. We have one dog that has done a 7-minute course in 2 minutes, which is really fast. Not exactly what we would want to have happen, but it sometimes things doesn't go how we plan.
Gotcha. Mrs. Dudley's class wants to know, how do you know when you can trust your dog?
That would be you.
Oh, when you're working the dog, you can see how the dog reacts to sheep. If it's too aggressive or too quick, then you would back off your training on that. But we have a down, so if they start to go a little wild, we can down the dog and let it have some space.
Yeah. So there's different commands that you can give the dog to kind of let it reset, as we say to little kids, we're going to reset our bodies, kind of a thing. Okay. And then, so those of us following along on the worksheet, that the dogs are all commanded, correct me if I'm wrong, but by a whistle, right? You guys have a whistle. Oh, we have one. Perfect. So we'll get a tighter view of that. So we have these whistles are what you guys use to command the sheep, or excuse me, command the dog, correct?
Yes.
And verbal if you're close, but usually it's a whistle because you're far away. The whistle can carry a long distance.
Cool. Well, that's great. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thanks for bringing your dog over here. Hi. Oh, someone wants to know, how old is the dog and what's its name?
His name is Cade, and he'll be 5 in July. I've had him
for those of
8 weeks old.
So for those who are curious, this is Cade. He's the same dog that was in the video. So thank you guys for showing us all of that. It's really cool to be able to see just the distance that you guys work at, and it's whistle and verbal cues that help those dogs to move those sheep around. So thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate that. Now we're going to shift gears on you guys just a little bit. As it starts to warm up around here, we're going to start noticing some mosquitoes, and I don't know about you guys, but I've already been bit once this season. So we're going to talk to my friend Erin about some of the things that we can do to mitigate some of those issues around our farms, ranches, and even your guys' homes too. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Aaron DeVincenzi from San Joaquin County Mosquito and Vector Control District. How many of you have been bitten by a mosquito before? Did you know that mosquitoes bite in order to use your blood as food for their eggs? The problem is they can also carry disease. Female mosquito bites. This is what her head would look like if we put it up underneath a microscope. Many eyes are called compound eyes. The antenna she uses for feeling and hearing, and there's actually 7 parts to her mouth. She has a lip that folds back. She has 6 parts that go into your skin. 4 of them are little scissors that make a really quick cut. I'm going to hold these up here for you to take a look at them. These would be like stylets or little scissors. Then she takes the other 2 and she uses these as a straw. And she draws the blood up between the 2 of these, but the problem is your blood is too thick for her to drink. So what she does is something really gross. She puts saliva in your blood, making your blood thinner and easier for her to drink. But if she's carrying a disease like malaria, West Nile virus, dengue, Zika, all those are diseases that can make us sick, and some people even die from them. So our goal in talking to you today about mosquitoes is basically dump out standing water around your house. That keeps mosquitoes from developing, and it keeps you and your family from being sick. So the female mosquito bites, she lays an egg raft on the water at about 150 to 300 eggs per egg raft, up to 4 times in her 3-week lifespan. This would be an example. Female mosquito would lay the eggs on the water. The eggs aren't in here, but they're small, about half the size of the eraser of a pencil. Then the larva stage, which looks like a little stick in the water, and then the pupa stage where they're hatching off the water as an adult mosquito. That pupa stage is like the cocoon stage. So in order to stop this from happening, we need you to look around your home, looking for things like maybe old tires that are filled with water. We have an example of an old tire here. It actually looks like there might be some egg rafts on the surface of that water from that tire. So something like this, you would want to have your parents get rid of properly at a dump, drain it out, or at least put it into a shed or a garage or a barn, being as we're here on Ag Day. Buckets like this, 1 bucket can produce enough mosquitoes to bother an entire city block of people. So a bucket like this, you would want to take it and basically dump that bucket out, get rid of that standing water, and that's going to help keep you from being bitten by mosquitoes and keep them from annoying you around your home. And then the last thing we want to encourage too is if you have a swimming pool that's green or you have a pond without any other fish, these are mosquito fish. Why do we call them that? Because they eat mosquito larvae, up to 100 larvae per fish per day. And we'll use them in a green pool, not a pool that you swim in that's clean, but a pool that looks like a swamp. Or we'll put them in a animal water trough on a farm, or a number of different areas these will work in. You could get them free. Your parents can call us. We'll even deliver them out free to you. So now you know mosquitoes grow around your house. They grow around farms. We need you to help by getting rid of standing water around your home and doing those things to maintain water so you don't have mosquitoes developing. I hope you have a great day here at AgVenture, and make sure you look for water around your home. Fight the Bite from San Joaquin County Mosquito and Vector Control District.
Thank you so much, Erin. What an informative chat we've had. So I have some students who are very curious about mosquitoes. So Mrs. Bakerscross wants to know, are there any types of mosquitoes that can kill you?
Great question. There are many different types of mosquitoes that can carry diseases that can make you very ill, and people die from those diseases. So yes, the actual little mosquito is considered the deadliest animal in the world.
Wow, such a little thing and so much power in that one bite.
Exactly.
Another class wants to know, how long do mosquitoes live for?
Normally, an adult mosquito will live 2 to 3 weeks in the summertime. They overwinter maybe 3 to 4 months in hibernation in areas that are warm. Interestingly enough, some lay their eggs on the ground, and those eggs can stay viable for several years until water hits them. So they are able to last a long period of time.
Wow. Mrs. Cardoza's class wants to know, how big can mosquitoes grow?
The largest mosquito we have here in our area is the winter mosquito. It's mainly just maybe 1.5 times the size of what you would see in the summer. The really large insects people call mosquito eaters or mosquito hawks actually are not mosquitoes. They're called a crane fly. They don't eat mosquitoes. They have nothing to do with them other than they're a winged insect.
Got ya. Interesting. We have Mrs. Osterman's class wants to know, can one mosquito suck the blood of 2 different people?
Yes, if a mosquito can't get enough blood from one person and another one's available, there's a possibility they could land on that person to continue to blood feed.
Okay, so many mosquito biting questions this time. How old are mosquitoes when they start biting you?
As soon as the mosquitoes hatch and their wings dry, they'll start looking for a blood meal, and it could be people, it could be any different type of animal. We have concern with canine heartworm or dog heartworm that's transmitted between the mosquitoes and dogs to other animals. So very quickly once they hatch.
Okay, we have a couple of questions from YouTube Live coming in. They want to know, do male mosquitoes bite?
Male mosquitoes do not bite. They have an antenna that's fluffy, almost like a plumage in a way, a feathery looking antenna. They don't bite. They don't have the mouth parts that can bite. They get their food from plant nectar, sugar from fruit. So it's only the female mosquito that bites, using your blood as food for her eggs.
Interesting. That all that mosquito bite damage done from half the population. Interesting. Another question from Lindsay Furtado over on YouTube Live is, why do mosquitoes carry diseases?
Different mosquitoes can carry different types of diseases, but not every mosquito carries all the diseases, if that makes any sense. So we have a mosquito here in San Joaquin County that primarily carries malaria, but the mosquito that carries West Nile virus doesn't carry malaria. It depends on the makeup of their bodies, how the mosquito's body is made up, its temperature, its ability to hold those viruses in its salivary glands, because when they bite you, they actually spit in your blood, making your blood thinner, easier to drink, and if they are carrying a disease, that's how everybody is exposed.
Interesting. Okay, and we have several questions wanting to know, why are mosquitoes attracted to water? Why is that? Why do we need to address that?
Okay, so mosquitoes are attracted to water because that's where they lay their eggs. All mosquito eggs eventually need to be exposed to water in order to hatch. Once they hatch out, they go to a larva stage, like you guys seen on the video, as well as here in this container, what's on the bottom. So through that larva, then the cocoon stage, which is kind of a little pupa stage. There's a few in there. I don't know if you guys can see them. They're rolling around. So through the egg, larva, and pupa stage, they need water in order to complete their life cycle or their metamorphosis, eventually hatching up to the top, as you see.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, that's all we have time for on that one. But I think, I don't know about you guys, but learning about mosquitoes and livestock and sheepdogs has made me need a good stretch. So what we're gonna do is we're all gonna stand up and we're gonna pretend like we have found a bucket of water on our farm or at our house that we need to dump out, but it's real heavy. So we're gonna have to stretch, okay? So everybody stand up with me. Let me get this back a little bit. Okay, stand up and then grab our big bucket, grab it. Ooh, and dump it over. Oh, and there's another one. So let's grab our other bucket. It's on this side. Okay, so we're gonna grab our bucket, grab it, stretch, and dump your bucket. Okay, now get all your wiggles out. Wiggle, stretch. Okay, everybody got your wiggles out? Okay, we are gonna move on to some more fun ag content. So give me one final shake. Okay, big stretch. All right. Now we're going to talk about water. We just learned that mosquitoes like water. And so we're going to talk about some properties of water and maybe do a little bit of a science experiment. So I have a friend with me. Her name is Kristen, and she's going to do a little bit of a science experiment with us and kind of talk to us about some properties of water. So good morning, Kristen. Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mrs. Kuhn, And I work for the Stockton area water suppliers. The water suppliers are the people that bring water to the faucet in your house and your school and all over Stockton. Today, we're going to do an experiment with liquid water, and this is something you can do at home. So, what we're going to learn about is two properties of water. The first one is called surface tension, and the second one is called cohesion. Now, before we get going and I explain some of these things to you, I want to show you what you're going to need if you'd like to do the experiment at home. And first of all, you're going to need some water. And you probably would need one of these. This is called a pipette or an eyedropper. And the way the pipette eyedropper works is you hold the black part, which is kind of squeezy, and you put it in the water, and then you let go of the top, and you can see it fills that little tube. And it allows us to dispense the water drop by drop by drop, which we're going to need to do during this experiment. Now, the other thing you're going to need is some wax paper. And you're going to need two pieces of wax paper, one stacked upon the other. You can find wax paper probably in a kitchen drawer at your house. You're also going to need two toothpicks. Keep them separate because they have different functions during this experiment. And the last thing you're going to need, besides, oh, maybe a napkin or two to mop up, the last thing you're going to need is a little bit of plain old household soap. And I'm just going to put my soap in a little dish here so that I can get at it easily. Now, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine before we get started. And that's this little fella up here. He's called a water strider. The word stride means to walk. That little creature can do something that most creatures on earth can't do. He can walk on water. As a matter of fact, he can walk, run, and jump on water. You can see how his little feet make impressions on the water, but he doesn't fall in. Now, the reason he doesn't fall in is because of a property of water called surface tension. If you look at this picture right here, that is a picture of surface tension. You can see how the water beads up on that leaf. Well, the surface tension of water causes the water to stick together and bead up, okay? And our water strider lives in a pond where the water is fairly still. This pond might be in a forest, okay? And the water strider needs to stay on top of the water. He doesn't need to know how to swim. He needs to be able to stay on top of the water because you know what lives in that water underneath the water strider? If you guessed fish and frogs, you're absolutely right. And fish and frogs love water striders. And we're not talking a romantic love here. Okay, we're talking fish and frogs love to eat water striders. So he depends on surface tension to keep him on top of the water. So now we're going to demonstrate surface tension. And here's our water again and our pipette. Okay, we're going to fill the pipette and we're going to put some water drops on the wax paper. Now you can see when we put those water drops on the wax paper, they look a lot like they did in that picture I showed you of surface tension. They stand up very tall. And if you lean over and you look at them from the side, you can see how tall they stand up. That's because of the surface tension of water. Now, let's move a drop or two and see how they move. It's very interesting. And this is going to demonstrate the property of cohesion. When we use our toothpick and we move the water, look how it kind of attaches itself to the toothpick. That's because water is cohesive. Water is attracted to other objects, other surfaces, and water is very attracted to itself. In fact, if we move that water toward one drop toward another, you can see that those two drops automatically grab onto each other and create a bigger drop. That is the cohesive property of water. Water loves water, and this is kind of a romantic love. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move around all of our water drops, and we're going to create two big water drops on our paper. So they almost look like marbles on the paper, and that's the surface tension that makes them stand up very tall. And then we're going to put down that toothpick, and we're going to pick up our other toothpick, and we're going to go over to the soap dish, and we're going to put some soap on that toothpick. And we're going to take that soap, and we're only going to touch one of these water drops with the soap. And you can see when we touch it with the soap, the water drop changes. Its behavior changes quite a bit just by touching it with that soap. And if you look at it from the side again, you can see that our original drop is still standing up nice and tall, but the drop we touched with soap, it flattened out. Look at this. The water drop here still moves like it used to. It's very cohesive. But if we use the other end of the stick, this one does not have the cohesion that it did. And that's because soap breaks the surface tension of water. Now, at our house, this is a pretty good thing. We use soap and water for all kinds of things. We use it to wash our hands, we use it to wash our hair, we use it to clean all the things in our house, which is a good thing. But go back to the Strider's pond. What would happen if we put some soap in the water strider's pond? Hmm. Would the water strider still be able to stand up on the surface tension? No, because we broke the surface tension of water by putting soap in the pond. Now, on the day that that happened, the fish and the frogs would have a field day. They would eat all the water striders they ever wanted to eat. But then they'd eat them all. And what would happen in a week? What would the fish and the frogs have to eat? Well, there wouldn't be any water striders left. What happens to a fish or a frog that doesn't have anything to eat? If you think that maybe they would starve to death, you're absolutely right. And there are other creatures that come by this pond, maybe some raccoons and an eagle, or maybe a skunk. They eat fish and frogs. This is called a food chain. And the food chain is that the water striders are there, and the fish and the frogs depend on that water strider for a food source. And so do the raccoons and the eagles. They depend on the fish and the frogs for a food source. But this food chain isn't working anymore. This pond is called an ecosystem, and we have interrupted the ecosystem by only putting in a little bit of soap in the water. This is called water pollution, and you can see right here that when water is contaminated by things like household products, we end up with water pollution. That isn't very pretty. So here's a couple things to remember. When you're using household products at home, chemicals, fertilizers, insecticides, when you're done using them, don't ever pour them out in nature. Always put them in a sealed container and make sure that sealed container ends up in the trash. We don't want that in our environment. And just one more thing. This picture right here shows a picture of something called a storm drain. Now, you've seen those in the streets. Everyone has storm drains in their neighborhood. But storm drains are just a place for water. We don't want anything going down that storm drain that could contaminate our water supply because storm drains have no cleaning mechanism. Anything that goes down that drain goes directly into our water supply. It goes directly to our local creek, then to a river, and then eventually to the ocean. And if you put anything down there other than water, it can contaminate our water supply. So no soap. If you're washing your car, it's a better idea to go to the car wash instead of putting soap in here. And no fertilizers, no oil, nothing from your vehicle, only rain down the storm drain. Well, I'm Mrs. Kuhn, and I work for the Stockton area water suppliers, and I want to thank you for listening today.
Thank you so much. What an informative chat we've had. And we have some students who have some questions for you. First and foremost, Mrs. Dudley's class wants to know, can you do the same experiment with aluminum foil instead of wax paper?
I don't think so. It might be worth a try just because it is an experiment, and there's a lot of different ways that experiments can be done. But the wax paper, because of its waxy surface, will cause the water to bead up. There are pieces of plastic. You could try it on a piece of glass or on a piece of smooth plastic. That might work as well, and it'd be a great idea to try that as an experiment.
What a fun idea for our students. Thank you. We actually have two classes who want to know, what does a water strider eat?
Oh, good question. I believe that water striders probably live on smaller creatures that live in that pond. Tiny, tiny little creatures that live underneath or on top of the water. They may also live on the vegetation that's in that pond as well.
Awesome. Miss Cardoza's class wants to know, how long have you been a water expert for?
Well, about, let's see, 15 years doing what I do right now, which is teaching water science and water conservation to school children. And then about 8 years before that, I was actually a grant writer, which means you procure money or get money in order to do water projects.
Awesome. Okay, a few more questions for you. Someone wants to know, can a water strider go underneath the water too?
Nope, they are built to be on top of the water, and that's why they depend on that surface tension that we looked at to stay on sort of the bubble that water creates. That is created by something called hydrogen bonds. The molecules of water hold tightly together, and that is why the water strider is able to stand on top of the water.
Awesome. I have another student on YouTube Live wants to know, what if you put a snake venom in the water? What will that do?
Well, I'm not sure. Hopefully it would be diluted by the volume of water. That pond actually has quite a bit of water in it, and I think a snake has a very small amount of venom that would be diluted and dispersed in the water.
I have 4 or 5 students. This is maybe a stumpy question. I have 4 or 5 students who want to know how fast a water strider can run. Any ideas?
I've never clocked one myself, but I would think that if they see a fish or a frog coming after them, they can move faster than the fish and the frogs.
Got ya. Okay, those of us following along on our worksheet, just a reminder, can you provide them the reminder of the 2 properties of water that you discussed?
Yes, I can. The 2 properties of water that we looked at today are surface tension and cohesion.
Gotcha. Okay, I have another YouTube Live question. They want to know, why is there so many different types of water?
Well, different types of water. I'm not sure what you're referring to then, that in that case, but the 2 main types of water are fresh water, which is what we use and drink on an everyday basis, and that's in our ponds and rivers and lakes and streams, or salt water, which is in the ocean. And salt water is not drinkable. Humans can't consume salt water, but we do consume fresh water.
Okay, and one last question for you. I think it refers back to our properties of water. How does the water turn into a bubble?
It is that surface tension, or the water molecules holding together those hydrogen bonds that I talked about. Water is made up of, I'm sure you've heard it referred to as H2O. Well, that refers to 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. And those hydrogen molecules, they form a bond that holds the water together and holds the water strider on top.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think our students learned something. And it looks like we have a lot of students who are very interested in water striders and how fast they can run. So to any of our 3rd graders, if you guys are out there and see a water strider, clock it and let me know how fast it runs, okay? So we're going to shift gears. We've talked about water, we've talked about livestock, but what things about agriculture that you may not typically think of is how, pardon the fly, is how does the product get from the field? How do our commodities get from the field or the orchard or the vineyards to your plate? And the very first piece of that during harvest is to take it from the field to a processing plant. And so that is done through trucking. So today we're going to talk to a friend of mine named Tiffany, who is with Pinella Trucking, and she's going to talk to us about a little bit about their operation and their facility and some of the things that they do. So good morning, Tiffany. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Pinella. I'm the General Operations Manager here at Pinella Trucking. We are an agricultural trucking company. We haul agricultural products from the field to the first point of processing, which is usually a cannery or some other processing plant. The company started in 1934 with Ralph Pinella, who had a flatbed pickup and he hauled sugar beets. Today, 80 some years later, we're hauling a multitude of products, which include carrots, garlic, onions, green tomatoes, red tomatoes, variety of nuts, and grapes. So you can see here, we have a whole bunch of trucks in the yard because we've just started our season. We're right now only hauling carrots out of the desert in California. But starting next week, we will start hauling garlic and our onions. And then in May, we start hauling cherries out of those trailers over there, which have the refrigerators on them because we have to keep the cherries cold. Then throughout the summer and into the fall, we start hauling the tomatoes and all of the other products, including the variety of nuts and grapes. And our season ends right towards the end of November. And then we have a couple of months off and we start everything up all over again. Right now through the yard, you can see that we're moving trailers around getting ready for onion season. There's a lot of maintenance that takes place throughout the year, even when we're not hauling any products. That's an onion trailer. Here comes a truck through the yard getting ready for some maintenance. Pinella Trucking only uses Peterbilt and Kenworth trucks, and all of them are 2011 or newer. So these bright red trailers right here are walnut tubs that are freshly painted. At the end of the season, last season, we took them all off of their trailers, sent them off to the sandblaster, and then brought them back here to our paint shop, and they've just recently been repainted for the walnut season that will begin in the late summer. So you can see behind me, those are onion trailers, which some of them you can see there's white plastic or wood in them. Those have been modified so that we can haul carrots in them. Once the carrot season comes to an end, we unmodify them. We remove the plastic or the wood so we can then haul the onions and the garlic. Behind me, you can see I just talked about the red walnut trailers. The gray is the sandblasted, and they're waiting to be painted. Here's some more of the trailers with the plastic or the wood in them, waiting to be have that taken out. Over here are the red tubs for tomatoes. We do have white tubs, but strictly now we're using the red tubs. We haul for Stanislaus Foods in Modesto, and we strictly use red tubs. We haul for them. The tomatoes are processed, and they make sauces, tomato sauces, spaghetti sauce, and of course, pizza sauce. So behind me, you can see our tower. This is our dispatch tower. During the busy season, it's crazy up there. Lots of phones ringing, lots of computer screens with trucks driving all over. The dispatchers sit up there and they can see the entire place. They can see all of our trucks coming and going, and they know exactly where all our trucks are throughout California at all times. Pinella Trucking has 3 locations, one in Stockton, one in Modesto, and one in Madera. At our main facility here in Stockton, we have a very large truck maintenance facility as well as trailer manufacturing spaces, which allow us to do all of our own maintenance, body work, and painting. In closing, a couple of interesting facts. The engine on these trucks weighs about half the weight of a car, and the truck weighs about 14,000 pounds. Thanks for joining us at Pinella Trucking, and remember, trucks feed our families.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. For those who haven't been to an ag venture before, we rarely, if ever, get to have a trucking company. So this is really exciting for us. So thank you. And the students are equally excited because I have about a zillion questions for you. The number one question from Collins, Fortuny, Furtado, Fetterman, Osterman, everyone wants to know, how many trucks and trailers do y'all have?
We have over 1,000 trailers and over 300 trucks.
Wow, what a big operation. So there's the answer for you guys. Several, more than just a handful of trucks and trailers going on over there. Another student wants to know, why are the chubs red?
I think you saw all the trucks in our yard there. Pinella, red. Everything's always been red. All of our trailers are painted red.
They're like a matching set.
That's right. It's just a long-standing tradition that everything is Pinella red. It's actually the color is Ferrari red, but that's just our company color.
Awesome. Okay. Miss Cardoza's class wants to know, what is your favorite food that you guys haul?
My favorite food?
Yeah, that y'all haul.
I would have to say tomatoes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big tomato fan. You can eat it lots of ways, and it's definitely a healthy food. So that would be my favorite.
Another red too. Okay, it fits right in with the theme you have there. Okay, Miss Jax wants to know, her class wants to know, how many employees do you guys employ?
This is very interesting. We are a seasonal trucking company. So in the off season, we have approximately 60 employees. But in our busy season, when we are hauling all of the agricultural products, we have upwards of 350 or 400. So it's a huge swing. At this time of year, we are doing a major hiring process, rehiring of all of the truck drivers that were working for us last season, and new truck drivers. So we have a huge curve from 60 employees to 350 employees in the summertime.
Yeah, that goes up real fast. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. Great Valley wants to know, how much weight can the trucks haul?
So you heard that the trucks weigh around 14,000 pounds, but when they're fully loaded, they're 80,000 pounds.
That's not a bathroom scale weight, guys. That's a lot of weight, man.
No, it's not.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, someone wants to know, you spoke about hauling agricultural commodities. Do you guys haul anything that's not agricultural commodities?
No, we do not. Everything is picked right out of the field. So it's all something that you can eat.
Awesome. Well, one last question that I think is really interesting for students. Can you explain to them why you guys modify your trailers for carrots?
Sure. So a lot of you have probably eaten little baby carrots as a snack, maybe even dipped them in some ranch dressing or something. So as you know, those baby carrots have a lot of moisture, and those trailers without that lining in them are a wire mesh. So if we put those carrots in those trailers without that lining and hauled them down the road, they would dry out and be yucky. So we line them, and it keeps the moisture in. So by the time they get to the grocery store, they're nice and good to eat.
Awesome. And those following along on the worksheet, which of the following is not an agricultural commodity that Pinella Trucking trucks? The options were carrots, garlic, strawberries, and walnuts. And the one that we are not hauling is strawberries. So that answers that question. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate that. I know that the students enjoyed that. I did myself. It was really interesting to see some of those details in person. So thanks for joining us today. And we are going to round out our panelist discussion with a discussion about pollinators. You guys are probably seeing a lot of bees out right now. You've seen a lot of bee boxes, and we just got out of almond harvest, or excuse me, almond blossom. And so pollinators, not just bees, are super, super important to agriculture in our daily lives. So we're going to have a chat with my friend Marcy over with Master Gardeners about pollinators.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marcy Souza, and I'm with the San Joaquin County UC Master Gardener Program. Today, we're going to talk about some VIPs. That's very important pollinators. Pollinators are important because they provide us with food. They help pollinate the crops and the different foods that we eat. There are 4 main groups of pollinators. Bees, which most people are very familiar with, make up almost 50% of the pollinators out there. Flies make up close to 25%. Butterflies and moths make up 10%, and the remaining percentage is everything else like hummingbirds, frogs, bats, crickets, beetles that are also considered pollinators in your garden. So let's talk a little bit about bees. There are over 20,000 species worldwide. In the United States, there's over 4,000 different types of bees. In California, we have 1,600 different types of bees that are out pollinating various food crops as well as flower crops in our communities. Okay, so bees are important. How important are they? A third of our food supply is pollinated by bees. That's 1 in every 3 bites of food. So this plate here has an example of some of the foods that we would not have if we didn't have bees. We wouldn't have squash, cucumbers, berries, different fruits. Tomatoes are self-pollinating, but bees definitely help increase yields while they're in buzzing around the different tomato flowers. If we didn't have flies, we wouldn't have chocolate. There's a certain fly that pollinates chocolate, and I know for sure I'm thankful of that fly because I really like my chocolate. Okay, so bees are the only insect that produce a food that we eat also. So not only are they pollinating the crops that we eat, but they produce a food that we eat. And we all know what that is, right? Honey, along with other products like wax that we can use from their hive and pollen. Bees have many different beneficial uses that we can use besides the different foods that we get to eat. Let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of a bee. Anatomy, talk about their body parts. So bees have 3 body parts. They have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. Only the female or the worker bees have stingers. Those are the ones that we see out working. The drones or the boy bees never leave the hive. They stay with the queen or they're out doing other work when the girls kick them out of the hive. Bees have 5 eyes, 3 on top of their head and 2 very large compound eyes. These compound eyes are made up of many different lenses, and this gives bees a superb vision when they're flying around, they can see the different flowers and things that they need to pollinate. Bees also see in ultraviolet light. So the yellow flower is what you and I would see, and the white flower with the red bullseye is what the bee would see if it was flying above, maybe through a field or over your garden. And this bullseye is an indicator. It's called a nectar guide, and this is what allows the bee to see, this is a plant that I want to land on. This is something that I can get either pollen or nectar. Bees cannot see in red. They cannot see the color red like we do, like this color red here. The bee would not be able to see that. It's not on their ultraviolet spectrum. A few other things about bees, they have antennas. Those antennas are covered in little hairs that helps them feel, communicate, navigate as they're flying. Their antennas are very helpful. They have 2 sets of wings, so they have 4 wings total. Those wings can beat, let's see, they beat 190 times a second. That's how fast bees' wings beat. That's 11,400 times in a minute a bee beats its wings. And bees have 2 stomachs, 2 separate stomachs, one for food that they eat, and then one that's just for nectar that they take back to the hive. So really interesting for how tiny of a little insect that they are. There are different types of bees. There are social bees, like honeybees, that like to be in large groups, and there are solitary bees, like a carpenter bee, for example, that doesn't like to be around other bees. They don't live with other bees. There are generalist bees, which means they'll fly to any type of flower or plant. And then there's specialist bees, meaning they only pollinate sunflowers or maybe squash blossoms. So they're very specific to the plants they go to. California native bees are very efficient in pollinating. They're actually 200 times more efficient than a European honeybee in pollinating plants. Here are just some examples of some California native bees that you may see in your garden. The top is a bumblebee. The golden color one is a male valley carpenter bee, and the black one next to it is a female valley carpenter bee. Here are just a couple more bees as well that you may see if you know where to look. So the top corner is a digger bee. This bee lives in the ground. So again, not in a hive, not in a typical place that you would expect a bee to live. We've got leaf cutter bees. This bee is busy cutting out circular shapes out of leaves that it's going to use to take back and build a home. And then sweat bees are a metallic green. And, you know, again, not a typical bee looking, maybe looks more like a fly, but definitely a bee out pollinating our plants. So honeybees and bumblebees are the only two that are social bees as far as living in colonies, and honeybees are the only ones that produce something that we can eat. The rest of them are not gathering nectar and pollen to take back anywhere to turn into honey. They're just strictly out pollinating plants. Okay, so butterflies, let's talk just briefly about them. Butterflies would most likely land on a flower like this. It has a tubular shape. And the reason why this is important is butterflies have a very long proboscis, a tongue, which is almost like a straw. And so they use that proboscis to suck up the nectar out of the flowers. And so this type of plant here, this purple one, would be attractive to a butterfly just because they would easily be able to get the nectar. Honeybees would be attracted to these circular, more flat flowers because they have a good landing spot for them. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't see different types of honeybees or California native bees on other plants, but you know, next time you're out in the garden, kind of just keep an eye open to see what types of flowers and plants are pollinators attracted to. You'll definitely see hummingbirds going for red flowers. They're very much attracted to the color red, whereas bees can't see the color red. Now, what are some things that we as gardeners can do? Some of the things that we teach the public about is providing shelter or habitat. It could be something that you buy, like this bee hotel. This has holes for carpenter bees. It has some tubes for mason bees. These slits up here are for butterfly. So butterfly would crawl in there and nest in the top of that. We would want to plant flowers that pollinators are attracted to. So keeping in mind what colors they can see, what shapes of flowers they're attracted to. Bees and other pollinators need water. So an easy way to provide water for bees is just to take a pan or a container, fill it with some rocks, maybe marbles, fill it halfway with water, and those rocks give the bees a landing spot to stop at, and then they can get a drink of water without having to worry about drowning. And we can help provide additional food sources for things like butterflies. So butterflies love to get a refreshing sip of orange juice. So you could just cut up some oranges, put them in a pan, and the butterflies would land on that, or other overripe fruit like bananas that might be getting a little too squishy. They love the sweet juices coming from that fruit and will stop by, take a drink, get some energy, and go on their day, continuing to pollinate your garden. So those are just some fun facts about our VIPs, our very important pollinators. Next time you're out in a garden, keep your eyes open for what pollinators may be in your yard and garden. Have a great day.
Thank you, Marcy. We have some students who are very interested in our VIPs. So the number one question, overwhelmingly, how many bees are in a hive?
Oh, there can be thousands of bees in a hive. And remember, the European honeybees are the ones most commonly that you would find in a beehive. But there's always one queen bee, and then thousands and thousands of worker bees, which are the female honeybees. They're the ones out gathering pollen and nectar from the plants.
So speaking of the queen bee, we have a student who wants to know what happens from Mrs. Stolar's class. What happens if the queen bee dies?
So if the queen bee starts aging, getting older, or starts to get ill, the hive will pick out a bee and make a new queen for the hive. They'll also do that if the hive starts to get too big. They can separate and make a new hive. But there always needs to be the queen bee. There's a queen bee is kind of like the boss, the one that's in charge, directing the colony. So they would definitely replace the queen bee with another healthy, strong female worker bee.
Oh, that must be where we get the idea of like the queen bee when we talk about it. That makes sense. Okay. Another couple of questions. Talk about stinging. So we have students who want to know, do honeybees sting, and if so, why?
Honeybees do sting, and it's, again, that's those female worker bees. And typically when you get stung, it's because they're trying to protect themselves. Honeybees do not want to sting you, because once they do sting, they die. And so that's not something that they're out trying to do, but maybe they were startled, maybe you were near a plant or a food source, and they want to protect that food source or the rest of their colony. Maybe you're getting too close to the hive, and so they're going to do this for a protection measure. But it's not something
Okay.
that they're out just looking for people to sting.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Miss Burke's class and Miss Eagles' class want to know, point of clarification, are wasps, flies, and frogs really pollinators?
They are. So there's a certain wasp that pollinates figs, the fig wasp, and that's all that it pollinates. And if we didn't have this particular wasp, we wouldn't have figs. Frogs, crickets, beetles, things like that, you've got to think they're always moving around, hopping around your garden, and maybe some pollen falls on their back, and the beetle, munches on one flower, gets some pollen on it, and then it moves to another flower, and it helps to transport that pollen. People can even be pollinators. So as we're out in the garden, maybe you have some pollen that brushes up against your shirt, your pants, on your shoes, and then as you move throughout the garden, you're also helping to spread that pollen from plant to plant.
Interesting. Okay, one final question. We've got
Okay.
several of them. They want to know, if there's a queen bee, is there a king bee?
There is not a king bee, just the queen bee. And actually the male bees are called drones, and they're only needed in the hive for a short amount of time. And then once they don't need them anymore, and that's to help make eggs, the girls kick them out of the hive, and then it just becomes just the worker bees again, which are the female bees. So the males are called drones and the females are called worker bees, but just the queen, she's the one in charge.
Awesome. Interesting. Well, thank you. And I think I can speak for a lot of students. I didn't know that the bees only see certain things and don't see the colors like we see them. So that's really interesting. And maybe makes sense why they're going to certain things or not, especially different pollinators like hummingbirds. So thank you so much, Marcy, for joining us. We certainly appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So we're actually going to give you guys a little bit of a presentation right now. In your student bags that you received, Master Gardeners, that Marcy is a part of, was kind enough to donate activity materials for you guys called Bean in a Bag. And so we are going to show you guys a video of how to create your own bean in a bag, and that you guys can be farmers and gardeners right in your own home.
The San Joaquin County UC Master Gardeners. Today I'm going to show you how to prepare your bean in a bag. So you are all going to get a piece of paper that looks like this. It's your mini greenhouse for the window. And you are also going to get a Ziploc bag that's going to have 2 cotton balls in it and 2 bean seeds. Now the first thing that you are going to want to do is you're going to take a pair of scissors and just kind of gently fold your paper, make a slit in it, and you're going to want to cut the center of your greenhouse out. This is where your Ziploc bag is going to go. And at the top, there are 2 lines that say cut this off, and you're going to go ahead and cut that off. There we go. So now it looks like a house. My friend Riley planted these bean seeds that we're going to take a look at. And so she wrote her name at the top, and she wrote the date that she planted them. She planted these on Sunday, February 21st. And so your next step would be to decorate your greenhouse. You can color it, you can add additional drawings to it, but you want to make this your own mini greenhouse. Okay, so now you're going to open up your Ziploc bag and you're going to take out the cotton balls, and you want to have some water handy. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your cotton ball nice and wet, and then you want to squeeze it out nice and get all that water out. We don't want the seed to rot. If the seed is in too much water, then it has the chance of rotting. And then we're going to kind of just fluff our cotton ball back up, just like that. Okay, so we're going to do that to both of our cotton balls. And then we're going to take our bean seeds and we're going to kind of just tuck them in and around this fluffy cotton ball. And again, you want to make sure you get as much water out. If the bean seeds are in too much water, they can rot and they'll never sprout. So you'll just kind of tuck the bean seed, make a little almost like a little pillow, little blanket for it, and then you're going to put it directly into your bag. So we're going to do this for both of them. Okay, we're going to seal the bag about halfway. We want to leave part of it open so that the beans can get some fresh air, because we all know that one of the things that seeds need to grow is oxygen. So we don't want to deprive them of getting some fresh oxygen. And then we're going to take our greenhouse that we cut out, and you can just turn it over. And what I do is just take some tape, and you want to find the end that you did not. I always put a little bit on the side, and then make sure you tape the end that is closed, not the end that is open. Okay, so now you can see that your cotton balls will show through the window. And then what you want to do with this is you want to put this in your window. You want to put it in a window that gets lots of sunshine, lots of light, that is warm, and you'll tape it to the window. And you can see Riley's bean that she just planted on Sunday has already sprouted and is starting to grow. And so we're just going to leave this just like this in her bag. We don't need to do anything else to it. And eventually you'll start to see the stem grow. You'll get some leaves, some true leaves, and it will eventually even grow out of the Ziploc bag where you have the opening at. I've had to tape the beans to the window just to keep kind of trellising them up as they kept growing. So it's really a fun project for you. Get to see how a bean looks as it's sprouting and as a green bean is growing. Hope you guys all have fun with this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Master Gardeners for donating that activity. We really appreciate it. Something else that you guys received in your student take-home bags were these cabbage plants donated by Bonnie Plants. So you can each take one home and plant them in your garden. And then teachers, you will receive an email from me that has the instructions on how to participate in the Bonnie Plants cabbage program. So just as a reminder on that. So that concludes our presentations for today. I want to thank my AgVenture committee for helping support this virtual endeavor. It means a lot to me to have their support, and the Ag Commissioner's Office who made all this possible, along with the rest of our sponsors. If you're interested, don't forget about the Healthy Dinner program for all of our chaperones, parents, teachers. It can be this live recording, or it can be the recording of the event itself. Either way, if you view those, you are eligible for our Healthy Dinner program, and we encourage you to take place and take part in that activity. If you have not viewed our presentations online, please go do so. You are also eligible to watch all of the other AgVentures. So there's a Lodi AgVenture and a Stockton AgVenture that are similar to this one, but all different content. So please go watch those if you'd like to. Those are available on our website as well as our YouTube channel. So go watch those, and you guys will be able to see, I think there's 17 different presentations that you'll be able to see. We encourage you to do that. If you're joining us via Zoom, you will get a link to a survey right after this. It'll open up for you. We encourage you to take that survey and give us your feedback for the future and what you liked and didn't like about this. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for our panelists for being here today. Thank you to our sponsors for joining us and supporting this endeavor. It comes at an expense and it's free to you guys. So thank you guys for sponsoring this program and supporting us and our students and agriculture and all that the county has to offer. So we hope that you enjoyed your adventure in agriculture, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.